Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Therapist Connect podcast. My name is Dr. Peter Blundell, and today I'm delighted to be interviewing Dr. Mish Seabrook. Mish is a psychotherapist, supervision enthusiast, and trainer. And in today's episode, she'll talk about her career and what brought her to become a therapist in the first place, as well as her PhD research, which explores how we can look after ourselves in supervision. If you like this episode of the Therapist Connect podcast, please leave us a review on your favourite podcast platform. Well, Mish, thanks so much for coming on the Therapist Connect podcast. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here and find out a little bit more about you.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm very nervous though, but I am really pleased that we've managed to get together. I know our diaries were like ships in the night, weren't we? We just couldn't find anything.
It was a bit ridiculous, really. I could do this. No, I can't do this. I'm sorry, I can't make it now. And all that kind of stuff that's gone on for quite a while.
But here we are. We did it.
We were determined to make it happen. So I'm glad that we did make it happen, and that our listeners can get to find out a little bit more about you. And I like the fact that for anyone who doesn't know, Mish's got her own podcast. You've had multiple podcasts now, actually, haven't you?
I'm a bit of a podcast addict. I think I just love them. I love listening to them, and I think, I could do a bit of that, and then suddenly there I was doing it.
Well, it's been really successful, but it's nice to turn the lens towards you rather than you being the host of this podcast.
Feels a bit weird, I have to say, but I'm going to embrace it. I'm up for new experiences. My first question, I ask everybody this who's come on the podcast, because I think it's a nice segue into finding out a bit more about you. But can you tell our listeners a little bit about how you came to be a therapist in the first place? What was it that drew you into the therapy profession? That's really hard. I was trying to think of the different layers to that question, because I suppose in a way I've always been drawn to people. I think, when I think back I used to work in retail back in, when my earliest jobs, I think most people have had that jobs like that. And people would just talk to me and they'd be buying clothes and then they'd just end up telling me their whole life story or problems they were having at the minute. And I'd always get a bit told off about talking too much. And I was thinking, people make a career of this, and I just enjoyed connecting with people. So I think I've always found myself drawn to being curious about where people are, who they are, what their story is. So I kind of fell into it, really. It wasn't something that was on my radar. I kind of didn't really know that there was such an amazing world of therapy out there. For a long time, I knew there were bits of it, but I just fell in it because I like people.
I think that's a really interesting answer, because I was thinking about the world of therapy when you were talking then, and actually how many people don't really know about it and what goes on inside it. And there's probably a lot of misconceptions about what therapy is and what it isn't. And kind of feeling like it resonated with you on some level, but you didn't really have a knowledge or an understanding of what that might look like if you trained or went down that path.
Yeah. And I only ended up finding that out sort of later on after I'd done a slightly different career. But really, it's always been a curiosity I've had about others, and just feeling at ease with talking to people and feeling that a connection was something that felt, I suppose, easy to me. It felt like chatting was something I was good at in a way, even though I know obviously therapy is not a chat, but certainly all through school, it was my school reports were always that I talk too much and I'm just interested in people, and then here we go.
It's interesting, isn't it? You very rarely hear that someone got career advice to be a therapist. During school years, you don't hear that very often, do you?
No, you're often told don't talk too much, and make sure that you do something that feels very sensible. And in some way, it does feel like it is a very serious and very
a sensible career, I suppose. But yeah, it wasn't really on my radar. So I just fell into it, really.
Yeah. You mentioned there that you'd been in retail, but then you kind of hinted at maybe having another career as well. So did you have a couple of careers before you?
Yeah. So I kind of wandered into retail because I needed a job. And I'm really grateful for that job because I met my best mates from there, and the people who know me really well. And we're at that point now, we know too much about each other that we can't not be friends because we've had too many years together. But that was really, really good grounding for me. But I just wasn't moved by what was a bestseller. It just wasn't a language that made much sense to me. And then I ended up working in a local prison in the psychology department in HMP Leicester. And it was when they was just setting up their psychology department, and there was a big kind of national rollout of offending behaviour group work programs. And it was just the start of that. And I was kind of there as admin. And again, just kind of fell into that. I thought it might be a bit interesting, and realised that it was scratching that itch of working with people, even though I wasn't doing the intensive work. I was kind of around the edges of it. So I started there really, and really, cut my teeth with being able to talk to anyone. That was a really good grounding for me. And I really strangely liked the prison environment, which I know is a weird thing to say, but it doesn't always suit everyone, I think. So that's where it started. And then one of my colleagues was in probation, and she said, "Oh, there's some jobs in probation if you're interested. They're going to roll out all the group work programs to the community now." And I thought, "Oh, I think I could do that." And then just applied for it and ended up doing the accredited group work programs in the community. So I was an accredited tutor. It was all very CBT based. And I really loved doing that job. And again, there's nothing like honing a craft if you're having to work with people who don't want to be there. There's nothing like being able to hold a crowd's attention when they're literally telling you how rubbish you are, and that this is a load of rubbish. And but again, I loved it. I loved the connections I made, the team I was working with, and I really felt like I found my groove a bit more. And then I decided to apply to be a probation officer in training. So got onto that and did 2-year probation officer training. And again, it was just a real baptism of fire of, getting on with some of the kind of hard edge of the work. It was challenging work, but just, again, like that kind of finding my groove in it. It kind of suited me in a strange way. And then once I'd qualified, I ended up working in another prison at HMP Gartree, which is a lifer unit. So hundreds of lifers kind of just dove in, again, back into prison again. So I kind of went prison, community, back into prison, and really, really enjoyed that work, even though that was really hard. It was a really, obviously people are in there because of the nature of the crimes that they'd done. And it was hard-edged work. It was difficult. The content was difficult, but I did really like, again, that prison environment. There's something about it. The language feels different. The energy feels different. And I quite liked being able to walk away from that. There was a clear line from work and home, and that was really good for me. And then as part of that, I had to go and see a supervisor. So a trained psychotherapist, because of the material that I was exposed to. I had to go and see this supervisor. Didn't really know what it was about, what it was for, but she's a trained psychotherapist and highly experienced. And I'd go and see her once a month just to process what was going on and seeing how I was in the work and how I was as a person. And then one day I kind of said, "How do I sit in your seat? How do I make that leap?" Because she was saying, you're kind of good at this. You're good at this facilitating. And part of my job in working with lifers was drawing out their life story so I could write these big parole reports. And she said, you're good at this. Have you ever thought about it? And I was like, yeah, I kind of want to sit there. I don't want to sit here. And so really, she was a bit of a mentor as well, and kind of propelled me to go for it. And she's been part of my life since then, really. So that was a good long time ago now when we first met. And then I ended up doing my master's in psychodynamic therapy, and then ended up setting up, did all my hours and my voluntary work and set up in business with a colleague of mine who still, we offer peer support now. So it's kind of been a journey that I didn't predict I'd be where I am. I've been constantly surprised along the way, really. So that's how it's panned out.
That's a really interesting path, and I think it's interesting that you moved from kind of group work and then to individual, and also maybe initially starting off with like CBT, but then moving into psychodynamic and possibly other kind of modalities as well. Is that your therapeutic approach now, psychodynamic, or do you?
No, I wouldn't say it was, and I'm chuckling at this because I imagine a lot of psychodynamic people like, you're not psychodynamic. I suppose. CBT was a really big influence on how I approached working with people. So I had to really learn a totally different language and a way of being in the seat that was psychodynamic. And I loved having a really good grounding in that theory. And I've taken those along with me. They're ways that I think about people and think about dynamics in the work I'm doing, but I wouldn't describe myself now as psychodynamic. I'd say I'm more pluralistic and draw on a number of different approaches. I suppose since I did my core training, I went and learned more, and I've kind of situate myself as a forever learner. I'm really curious about how the people work and how it can be relevant to what I'm doing or relevant to clients that I'm working with. So I think definitely now I tend to work in a way which draws on a lot of different influences which are there to serve what the client and I co-create in a therapeutic space. So we have a really kind of in-depth conversation about what they would like, what approach they think they would like, and then constantly come back to that about whether we're meeting that. So I feel like I've been in a really lucky position of being able to draw on things that come from a wide range of modalities, really. And in a way, I've kind of, at the minute, I feel like I'm evolving again, which won't surprise people who know me well. They'll know that I'm always going, oh, what's this and what's that and what's next and what's out there. So I feel like I'm almost doing a full circle. I'm kind of going back and scooping up a bit more of the CBT element and bringing that in a bit more. And, obviously this will come out whenever it comes out, but at the time of recording, I'm just about to start doing a coaching qualification and bring that in and bring a more therapeutically informed coaching element, because I kind of want to meet the need of what I see is out there. Always think, how can I best serve the people that are coming to me? And I feel like this could really provide an extra arm of what I offer. So about to bring that in, which will be interesting again.
You sound like me. It sounds like you love a course. Because I do as well. I love learning. But I was thinking about when you were talking, like a lot of students who start on some of the courses I teach on, and they kind of want to know, like, get to day one and they like want to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of like, actually, you're going to get to the end of the course and probably know less than when you started.
Definitely.
In terms of it opens up, well, what about this? What about this? And what about this? But that's what I like about being a therapist, is that it's just an ongoing learning opportunity. It's not like you ever get to a point where you go, oh, I kind of know everything I need to know now, and then that's it,
Yeah, when do you get to that?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to meet the person who is at that bit, because I'm like, I feel like I'm constantly learning. And I think you're absolutely right in the way that we come to an end of a bit of learning, and in some respects, it really highlights to me what I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, well, then I want to learn a bit more about this and a bit more about that. And I love learning. I've always loved learning.
But I also liked what you were talking about in terms of going back to some of the stuff that you learned early on in your career, because sometimes it's not always about something new. Sometimes, it's about going, oh, actually looking at the stuff that you learn at the start of your therapy career and kind of going, how do I see this differently now that I've changed over however many years?
Yeah. Because one of the fundamental things that I do in the group work stuff was about where you are and where you want to be. And that question has always been around for me, I suppose, in whoever I'm working with and whatever approach that I'm doing. And even though that's quite a CBT based question, and in some respects a kind of coaching question, which is why I say I've kind of gone back around and scooped it back up. That's where I always come back to that bit about where people are on their journey and what it is that they want that journey to look like. So, and however I can best serve that, I'm totally up for adding to what I can bring. I feel like it's my duty, really.
Well, talking about adding, you also went and got your PhD as well, and amongst all this other training and courses that you're doing.
It sounds like I've got one of those like days that actually means I have 48 hours in one day. I don't. Yeah, I did. I went and did my doctorate, and it was at the University of Chester, and it was a professional doctorate. So there was a tour element to it, which really helped me hone my writing skill and my confidence as a researcher. So that really suited me, and I needed a bit of hand holding, the teaching up there is absolutely brilliant. If ever anyone's looking, definitely check that out as an option. So I did my research. Took me 4 and a bit years to do, and I loved it. I loved it because I could do a really deep dive into. So I researched how supervisory self-care is addressed in clinical supervision, because I'm really passionate about our own resilience and well-being as practitioners, and also I'm really, really interested in supervision as well. So it kind of stuck the two together, really, and I think it's a big part of our work that we struggle with for many reasons. I wanted to do a deep dive into that. But again, coming from that still makes me think, well, I might know a lot about that one little bit, but there's loads that I don't know. So
it's interesting, isn't it, doing a piece of research like that and kind of you become like an expert in this kind of narrow thing, and then as you explore, you kind of realize all the things that you don't know about as well.
Yeah, so much I don't know, and I think that's probably what fuels my learning passion, that I constantly think I don't know stuff, but I love doing my doctoral research. I was, I'd saved up for it a lot over years. I kind of scratched the itch, and again, this person who is still a mentor and supervisor back in the day had kind of nudged me a little. I kind of keep blaming her, so it's all your fault that I've done it. But it was her way of paying it forward, I suppose, and saying, I can see that you could do this. And all the way along, she's been such a amazing cheerleader all the way along.
I think it's amazing. Sometimes that's maybe the push we need, isn't it? Is somebody having a cheerleader there saying, "Yeah, you can do this. This is for you."
Yeah. And I kind of didn't. My background is, I'm mixed race. I'm from a place of essentially we didn't have a lot of money when we grew up. My parents weren't born in this country, so I was coming from a place where there's many layers to why I've not felt particularly good enough to do things and felt quite othered. So if you told little Mish that I'd be not only able to sustain a career, but also to do some deep research and to be able to share my knowledge with people and to have that passion still after all these years, little Mish wouldn't believe that. She'd be like, what? Are you kidding? So I kind of feel like, particularly with my doctorate, which is why why I use the doctor bit a lot. I feel like it's almost a political statement for me. And also I like to fly the flag for other mixed race people in the therapeutic world who are finding their way. And I kind of want to go, yeah, you know what, you can do more than what other people will think you could do, and also more than what you might think you can do as well. So it's quite a political thing. That's why I use it a lot.
And acknowledging that achievement that work that you've done, and I think you've earned it. Why not use it?
And I just love doing the research. I think which sounds weird because I know people have really different relationships with doing any kind of research, and like I say, it's not something I ever thought I could do. So all the way along I've gone, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to give it a go. And then having people around me, that's what helped me the most. People around me going, yeah, you can do this. And then in the end going, oh my God, I think I've done this thing. It's just weird for me.
It's brilliant, and congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found in your research? Like maybe
wow,
I know there's probably quite a bit, but maybe some of the key bits from it.
Yeah, I suppose the kind of key headlines is that supervisees struggle to know how to bring in self-care. They feel a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. They don't know what's okay and what's not okay. And supervisors need to be really clear about what the kind of rules are, and I say rules in inverted commas, around what can be brought. I think there's lots of conversations to be had about the process around what it might feel like to bring in ourselves into the work. We want to be seen as competent and capable, and we're kind of sorted. And I feel like we need to smash some of those myths a little bit and be vulnerable in the work that we bring in. But there is a lot of permission giving needed. And also the language, I looked at some of the language we use around it. So using metaphor was a really interesting way that felt less threatening to bring in how supervisees might want to address it. And there's lots of hesitations and tentative language around talking about their self-care, which shows that it feels awkward and we're not really sure. And I just kind of encourage conversations around, like, what would it be like to talk more about yourself, and what are the things you don't want to tell me but we need to bring in. It was, I did really enjoy the whole process, but I mean, it was hard slog, don't get me wrong. Those kind of over Christmas breaks and stuff, trying to wade through massive bits of data. But I did enjoy it. Did feel quite self-indulgent at times.
Yeah. And then that writing up of it, of kind of making sure that it's all there together and it's all coherent and consistent. It's a big piece of work. I was interested, you were talking about bringing those bits of ourselves that we don't want to bring, or the bits of our practice that we don't want to talk about. And I think that's about, for me, like safer spaces in supervision, like feeling like your supervisor is not going to be judgmental, and you're going to be able to kind of openly talk about some of those things. And one of the things that you've launched is your Supervision Institute. So I assume that ties in with some of that. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that? And
well, I kind of thought there was my own journey as a supervisor, going, who's out there? How can I connect with other supervisors? And how do we reflect on what we're doing? How do we support each other? How do we shine a spotlight? It is a skill. It's not, I always think that it's not like a rite of passage. You don't do therapist supervisor. It is an actual skill to be able to hold the tension that is there between being supportive and to evaluate. I feel like there's a constant tension there, and to help someone really reflect on what they're doing and challenge people, but also celebrate everything they're doing. It's just again a different language, a different world that we have to step into. And so setting this up was really met a need in me, as most things are when we set things up. But I kind of wanted to just go, hey, supervisors, what are you doing? How are you doing? Can I help facilitate a bit of a shared space? Can we help each other, really? And just go, supervision is awesome, by the way, people, if you don't know what it is. And a lot of people don't know what it is. So I just wanted to shine a bit of a spotlight. So it's developing. Yeah, it's developing. And I've been really pleased with the response. People seems to have warmed to it, which is lovely. And yeah, I hope to still offer those spaces.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds brilliant, and I'm just wondering, is where can people access that? Is that on your website, or is it got?
Yeah. So I have a website specifically, supervisioninstitute.com, but also people go through my own website, and there's a podcast about the craft of supervision, and I just like talking about it, sharing ideas, and drawing on everyone's expertise, really. And I think one of the best ways I can serve a community of supervisors is by encouraging people to talk about it and share the knowledge. So it's just to facilitate that, really.
I was wondering, how do you see the wider therapy community, and how connected do you feel to other therapists?
Oh, I feel much more connected than I think I have ever done. And part of that is, well, things that you and Kaz set up, the Therapist Connect hashtag just totally changed that for me. So thanks for that. I really appreciate that. That was quite a pivotal moment in being connected to a wider group. In terms of along the way, I've definitely made connections along the way. So one of my colleagues who I trained with, with like mates and colleagues, and we make an effort with that. And I think I've recognised that I need to make an effort to be connected. And I've made so many connections now, and it feels great. Actually, I feel much more connected than I ever have, and that is through a lot of social media. As much as social media can be a bit of a doom scrolling pit sometimes, it is through the power of social media, and I think for that, the social element of it has been revolutionary for me, feeling connected. But I also make sure I take that connection and go with it. Meet up, have a Zoom chat, have a coffee if I can, so I think connection is a big thing to me, and particularly in private practice, it can be really lonely work. So I feel like that's part of my own self-care, to be connected with others, and over lots of different subjects as well. So I'm really grateful for the use of social media for that, and particularly hashtag that you and Kaz set up. It's changed everything.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. I suppose one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking was, sometimes we see the external stuff on social media, so people debating or arguing or having differences of opinion or whatever, and so it can maybe create this idea that that's all it is.
Yeah.
And then maybe what's hidden is actually some people connecting over those common goals or common ideas, and actually building up relationships that aren't always public, but they've been formed through some of those discussions and shared things that have been shared.
And doing that on a global scale as well. So I'm always up for having chats with people, because I think, why wouldn't you want to keep connected with people? It's what it's there for, I think, even though there can be a lot of noise on there. I do have to kind of filter out some of the noise sometimes and just go for the connection and support each other. I think I'm very much for collaboration and connection over competition. So
so this might be the opposite of what you're talking about, but I suppose this next question. But I'm wondering, what do you think is the biggest challenge that we face in counselling and psychotherapy right now?
Oh, I think there's a few.
There's a few.
Okay, I think there is a challenge around our expertise being diluted, in terms of, there are a lot of people who would describe themselves as having expertise and being qualified to do this. I find that a little jarring. So experts without clinical training or having any idea of opening up something and not having the skills to know how to deal with that, I find that really concerning. And I think there is a dilution of our amazing skill that we've worked really hard to get. So that I find concerning anyway. I think that, I just think people need to be careful about where they're getting their advice from and who they're going to. And alongside that, I suppose one of the biggest challenges is scoped. I mean, it's a big challenge for people. I have interestingly mixed feelings around it all. In one sense, I like some of the understanding about where people are, but I don't like the my way of working is better than your way. That's not where I sit. It doesn't make sense for me as a person. I'm never going to subscribe to that kind of schoolism of my way. I'm better than you because of it. That's just not who I am. But it will be a challenge, and I see colleagues that talking about it. I see in supervision we're talking about it. I suppose I wonder what it will change for people. Who will it change these things for? Who is it for, in a way? And fundamentally, I was saying to a colleague recently, are you on the professional register? Yes or no? Can people work with you and know that you're working in a way that means that you're still on the professional register? Okay. So I think that's going to be a real challenge. I'm really curious about how it's going to affect people and what it will bring up. It's just an interesting time. There's a lot going on around that, I think, and I sit in a place of curiosity, but I suppose I'm not sure about it.
And I think, just to follow on from what you're saying, I think up until this point, there's been a lot of theoretical discussion and views shared, and now we're kind of moving towards okay, this is being implemented.
Yeah.
Now we're actually going to see what impacts that has. And that's challenging in lots of different ways. It brings up a lot of things.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's really useful to have open discussions about that, because there'll be some people that that don't feel any effect of it. And actually, I think in supervision, it might be something that you really want to discuss. And as supervisors, get up to date with it, please, supervisors, so that you can talk about it from a place of understanding. But I kind of go, how is this going to help me serve my clients, and what will it change? And if it does change it, so I suppose I'm still at a kind of, I don't know, but I know it's coming, and I know something. I feel the ripples of it within the work. So there is an evolution, I suppose, of how we might view ourselves and how we might view the profession and where we sit in that. And I think people need to have their own, again, that relationship with it. Where am I with this, and how might it affect me and my work? And what might I want to change about things, or what might I not need to change about things? And interesting discussions.
And interesting times to come, I think.
No doubt.
So I suppose my last question is just what else have you got coming up? I suppose you're going to be doing your coaching qualification, which I'm sure is going to take quite a bit of time.
No, and what I'm chuckling at is this, like, okay, I'm now going to start doing this, and I've got loads of books to read and some pre-course prep and stuff like that. I'm really curious about how I'll be able to bring it in to the work I want to do. I'm really there's a particular kind of I suppose group of people I want to serve, that I see a lot, I hear a lot, that perhaps I might be able to use it in terms of, so basically it's either women entrepreneurs or women in business who are juggling, who do the juggle, who are looking for balance, who are juggling having businesses as well as potential family commitments or the life commitments that they've got. And that's a real group of people that I'm really interested to see how I can help serve that in coaching. I see it a lot, I suppose, and so I'm trying to look at how I can best serve that when I hear of it a lot. So I suppose what's next for me is just keeping up with all the stuff I do around supervision, but also bringing in this element of keeping our resilience going, and how best we continue to look after ourselves. So staying with all the stuff that I'm really passionate about, but perhaps just making it clearer about certain elements of that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Lots to be done, and I'm ready to learn again.
It's exciting. You've always got so many projects on the go. So if people are interested, they should head over to your website, because there's loads of stuff on there. Do you want to say it so that it's there for all?
Yeah. So my own website is michelleseabrook.co.uk, or you can find me on. I seem to be making a move more on Instagram. I don't know how I feel about X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it. So yeah, Dr. Mish, just generally look for that, and I'll pop up somewhere. But yeah, michelleseabrook.co.uk, and also the supervision stuff is supervisioninstitute.com. But I'm really happy for conversations and people to reach out, and anything. Yeah, I suppose I see myself as in service to others, and however I can skill up to do that, I'm always on the lookout for connection and how we can collaborate and stuff like that. I think there's so much we can join forces on. So I look forward to what's next.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we've been able to collaborate on this podcast episode.
Me too.
It's been lovely chatting to you again. Stay in touch, and thanks for coming on the Therapist Connect podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
See ya.
If you like this episode of the Therapist Connect podcast, please leave us a review on your favourite podcast platform.